Yeah, okay. So if you just got out of school or about to get out of school, I think it's kind of important for you to remember this is that just because you finished school doesn't mean you finished learning. You need to go somewhere where you can learn.
Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. I'm Komal Babar and I welcome you all to tonight's session with Christo. IDEA is back with another session. Throughout this quarantine time, we're trying our best to create productive environment and continue our legacy of becoming an empowering arena. We will really appreciate your feedback after this session. As a lot of new people have joined us today, I would like to share a short introduction of IDEA. We are a thriving society of COMSATS University, Islamabad, working since last 10 years. It is a platform where students watch their dreams unfold and master their realization. So let's start our session for which we and you are excited for. Our guest for tonight is none other than Christo. He is the holder of many titles, the list goes on, and one of these titles is entrepreneur. He empowers creatives through business strategy. He is also the founder of the Futur, that is an online content and education platform. He is on a mission to teach 1 billion people to make a living by doing what they love. With no further delay, let's welcome him.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, welcome to the session, Chris. I am honored
Thank you so
to be
much.
hosting this session tonight with you on behalf of IDEA COMSATS. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
How was your morning? Do you know that we are on a perfect 12-hour difference? It's morning for you.
That's
and
pretty
it's
cool.
night for
So it's 11 o'clock at night for you, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Like,
Well,
in
thanks
an
for
hour,
staying
it
up
will be-
late.
Yeah. Well, it's not a big deal. I mean, you were gonna be in the session, so. Okay, so I wanted to ask you: is this your first time talking with an audience that is other than English? You usually
No,
talk with people.
Yeah, I talk to people from all over the world, so this is exciting for me. I've done a couple of live streams from people from Nigeria and Ghana, in Brazil, and in the Philippines. So I love this.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I hope you're just as excited to have us as we are to have you here tonight. Okay, so I will just dive into the topic. I know everybody here, just like me, wants to know about your journey. Like, what drove you to become an entrepreneur?
I think this was just a byproduct of growing up relatively poor. I came to America as a refugee with my parents from Vietnam fleeing communism. And I didn't know it at the time, but we didn't have a lot of money. All I knew is I wanted things that we could not afford or buy. I didn't know that there was another way to do this. So ever since I was a young person, probably 6, 7 years old, I've been doing entrepreneurial-like things to try to get some money to buy the things that I've wanted. It wasn't until many failures later that I discovered design as a vehicle for me to make something that other people might want and be able to charge money for it and grow a business out of that.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Like, so I wanted to ask you this as well, that did you have any inspirations? Did you ever feel motivated by someone that made you want to do this?
To make me want to go into business or do design?
Well, in business.
Business, I don't know, but you know, there's this dreamer part inside of me that you watch TV shows and you look at the life that is presented to you on TV and you flip through magazines and everybody's living a pretty wonderful, splendid lifestyle of luxury and design. And I looked around our house and I was thinking, is this a different reality? Why don't our walls and our drapes and our carpet and our furniture look this way? And I was comparing it to the magazines and images that I saw. I was thumbing through GQ and seeing these very dapper gentlemen dressed in a certain way. And I looked at the price tags on these things and it was very, very expensive, way out of my reach. And so I started to think about, what do I need to do? How can I become valuable to other people? And like many young people, when I turned 15 years old, I got a worker's permit. I started working, doing labor-intensive tasks, stock boy at a grocery store. I dropped fries at a fast food restaurant and earned a whopping $3.25 an hour. At the end of the week, I looked at my paycheck after the government had taken out their withholdings, and it was nothing. It was going to be weeks of work before I could actually even buy like a video game or something that I wanted. And so I started to think about, like, how do I need to become this person? And eventually I did meet a graphic designer. who owned his own business, silk screening T-shirts, and he was a designer with a pedigree in graphic design. He worked for Atari, and there I started to see like, wow, you can apply your creativity to a business and actually make quite a bit of money doing it.
That is a good. Well, you actually had a mentor help you through this.
Well, I just learned by looking. So sometimes, and I talk about this quite a bit on my social channels and in videos, that the thing about mentorship is the person has to agree for them to work with you and give their very precious time, which they hold very highly, for you to do something in exchange to help them. I like it. I like to look at it like, well, there are people that can mentor you from afar that don't even know that they are your mentor. You could just watch them, observe them, ask them some questions, and then learn from the things that they do. And you can make some educated guesses that way.
Well, yes, that is kind of true. Like, a mentor doesn't have to be always there for you, like in front of you. You could just have anybody as your mentor, whoever gives you inspiration to do something. That is what I believe.
Mm-hmm,
So,
me too.
what is it that is inside entrepreneurs that keeps them to take the financial risks that they take?
I think there's a couple of things. I was joking with my wife, and I said it's the entrepreneurial curse, the desire to work more for less pay with uncertainty, just so that you can do things your own way. So there's this little spirit of rebellion and independence inside each entrepreneur. They have an idea. They'd like to change the world for the better, I think, or to provide a solution for a problem they see. And they're willing to risk a lot. And it's part of the package. You can't be an entrepreneur if you're not willing to risk, if you're not willing to fail. So these are key ingredients.
Well, sometimes, well, I wanted to ask you this. Sometimes people that are thriving to become entrepreneurs, they take many financial risks and they keep on failing. What should they do to keep themselves motivated and to stay on that path? Because it is easy to get demotivated from anything, literally anything from your life.
Yeah, so I think this is one of those things where it's about your resolve, how bad you want something. And if you really truly believe in your idea, you just stick with it. I'm not talking about driving yourself into bankruptcy and financial ruin and alienating everybody that loves you in your life. But if you read the stories of many successful entrepreneurs, they're tested time and time and again, and they don't break. They keep moving forward. They learn from their experience. They adapt. They're not doing the same thing over and over again. What they're doing is they're learning from each iteration. They're making small bets versus one giant gamble, and eventually they figure out what works. And they have to also be smart enough to know that maybe this is a dead end. And Seth Godin talks about this in his book, The Dip. We should decide beforehand if we're going to be committed to a task, because after the fun and the novelty wears off, after the excitement is gone, you get into the dip, the hard part, the work that is unrewarded, that is unrecognized. And if you push through that, you get to the top. And he said the interesting thing about the difficulty, and we have to embrace this, is that the things that you want should be difficult, because difficulty creates a barrier to keep other people out. It's a filter to only reward the people who truly want it the most. And that creates scarcity, and scarcity creates value. So if everybody's doing it, it becomes a commodity. It's not valuable. So if you're able to push through the pain, to make it through the dip, you get onto the other side in a very rare group of people who are able to do what you do, therefore commanding a high dollar, a high value for what it is that you do.
Okay, yes, that is quite an interesting way of looking at it. Well, I have another question. Like, if you are good at teaching and you decide to make an online course, but you have zero audience, what would you do for the next 1 year? Like, with a zero audience, how do you start something?
Okay,
like
so you want the master plan on how to launch an online course from zero? Is that your question? Yeah?
Well, yeah, that is kind of my question.
Okay, no, you could rephrase your question for me if I misunderstood it.
Well, for example, if you want to open a teaching channel, but you have zero audience, you have zero reach, what do you do for a whole year? How do you bring audience to your channel?
Okay. You do realize everybody that's created a video ever starts in exactly the same position, right? Nobody starts a YouTube channel with a 10,000 audience baked in, as far as I know. unless you buy an audience, and you could do that. There are channels that have gone dormant that you can buy if it's aligned with what it is that you want to do, and you take over the channel so you can inherit the work that somebody else had done. There's a risk involved because they're like, well, who are you and why are you connected, and why is all the content looks and sounds different today? But we all start out at zero and almost everything that we do. So you're going to start a channel, and you're going to make the commitment to work for the next year, and you're going to dedicate a certain amount of time and energy every single week to produce content. And what you do is you don't do it for other people. You don't do it for an audience. You don't do it for followers. You don't do it for accolades or people to validate who you are. You do it because it's part of how you exist as a human being. You articulate your thinking, and you learn from doing the things that you do. And then you watch and you review the content that you make and you just ask yourself, what did I do well? And what could I do better? And apply that each and every single time you move forward. Initially, it's very dangerous to look at your numbers, because the numbers will not be good unless you are just a miracle, wonderful person that becomes viral instantly. But that's like chasing being a professional athlete. It happens for some people, but for the rest of us, it just takes work, and you got to grind through it. There's a young man who's been on our channel twice now. His name is Unmesh Dinda. He's from India, and he said that he made 100 videos only for a few thousand followers, and it was painful, but he pushed through it. Now he's over 2 million followers or subscribers on YouTube, and you got to get through this. Marques Brownlee, his initial videos were quite unwatchable, but he pushed through the painful part, the dip that I talked about earlier, and then eventually you build an audience. There's a couple of things you need to think about. I like this idea of marketing as written by Seth Godin. I guess this is the second time I'm referring to him. And he says, marketing is the generous act of helping other people achieve their goals. So when you're creating content, people can smell an agenda. They can smell that you're trying to do something to get them to buy something or to do something else. And I think that's probably the wrong way to approach it, at least from my point of view. What I would suggest that you do is to create content to help people, to teach them, to give them value, and learn to be a better teacher. Give it without strings attached. Don't try to promote, don't try to sell, and build an audience that way that shows up. And at the beginning, very few people will show up. But if you deliver value to 10 people, they tell 10 other people, and they keep telling more and more people, and they eventually will come to trust you, to know you, and to like you. And this is what the goal is.
So doing sales through ads would be a direct starting point, or first building audience would be a first priority?
Doing sales and ads for your videos?
Yes, through ads.
No, I would. No, you should not do that at all. This is the opposite of what I'm suggesting. If you make valuable content, what you need to just realize is
I should focus on my audience first, and then
only focus on your audience. Only focus on your audience. Period. Now, sometimes you might have produced a gem, like a really great video, say 40 videos in, 30 videos in, you make something that's really good, but your audience is still tiny, and you think, you know what, this is valuable. People would pay money to watch this video. And then you might consider boosting it to audiences that might find it to be valuable. And there are strategies and techniques to do this. You do the lookalike audience, where you look at somebody else who's got a lot more followers than you, that is doing similar or complementary content, and then you target their audience and you promote your video on their channel, so that the ads that run before their videos is your video. And you're not trying to sell anything, you're just trying to teach and give people value.
Okay. So, well, I should have asked this before, but how to articulate your startup idea? Where should we begin?
In terms of like how you should teach, like what to teach, or when you say startup idea?
Startup idea could be anything. Like if I'm a graphic designer, how should I articulate it? How do I make it seem different from everybody else's? Like, where should we begin building our empire?
Yes. Okay. You want to build your empire. Okay. Yeah. Here's what I would say. If you're just starting out making content, and that's going to include a lot of people, right? I don't think you should worry too much about being different. I think you have to learn just how to be present, to have energy and to project energy, and to be able to string together coherent sentences without stammering or stuttering your way through it. I think you just need practice. You need time on the mat or time running on the field. You just need to do that. And I wouldn't worry about being different at the beginning, because you need to develop a certain amount of confidence and charisma and be able to project yourself. And once you do that, I think then or maybe while you're doing that, you can start looking at where are the gaps in the world of graphic design content. Maybe everybody's focusing on logo redesigns, which a lot of people are. Maybe there's a different take that you have. Maybe you can do it with a sense of humor, or you can conceive of certain challenges within very tight constraints that people tune in to watch. What will happen next? There are ways to do this, but just remember something. There are probably tens of thousands, if not 100,000 different creative people trying to teach on YouTube. Yet there's room for more. And just because people are tuning in for your very unique style of delivery, your personality, and they connect with you. And maybe they like the way that you look or the way you speak or your voice or something else that you bring to it. And that's why people will tune in. So don't be discouraged if there are a lot of people already in your space. Just be you, show up as who you are, and an audience will eventually find you.
Okay. Well, as an entrepreneur, how do you look at, well, when you're employing someone, what do you see in them? Do you see that they are similar to you, or they should be different from you? Should they have an employee attitude or an entrepreneur attitude? What do you look for?
Oh, there's a lot of questions in there. If I've hired somebody, it already means that the work that they do is good enough, that I believe in something about who they are, and that we have shared beliefs and values. And sometimes we get one of those three things wrong, and then it winds up being not a good fit. So let's talk about the beliefs and values and how they approach life. We like to run a very flat management style. That means that each person needs to arrive as an independent thinker, that are self-motivated, self-directed, that enjoy autonomy, the freedom to do what they want when they want. And so it requires a lot of discipline and a little self-management to be able to do that. And we like those kinds of people. Conversely, we don't really like to employ people who stand around and wait for us to tell them the next step. Like, here's step one. And then they do it and they're like, what's the next step? Here's step two, step three, step four. I have two boys. They were younger when I was having this conversation with one of them. But I said to my youngest son, I said, if you want to be more valuable in the world, you have to be able to anticipate what the next steps are. The more steps that you can anticipate, the higher the value you provide. For example, if you work for a convenience store or something and they say, stand there, and you just stand there, and they say, sweep this, and then you sweep this, and then go take out the garbage. Basically, your manager has to spend a lot of their time managing you. But if you show up at the store and they say, stand there, and you stand there and you notice the floors are dirty, and you say, look, you mind if I sweep this? And I noticed in the back, the garbage is full. Is it all right if I go and take care of that? Then I noticed, boss, that we have this system that if we organize it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we would have less trash stacked in the back. Or there's this recycling program that we should enroll in to help ease the burden on the environment. That is a person who's going to be promoted. That is a person who's going to move up. And that's not any different whether you're a computer scientist, an artist, or an accountant. It's all the same. Your ability to anticipate the next steps for your boss, for your clients, raises your value in the world.
Okay. So, well, if you are good at a skill, but you cannot do it at an industry level, and you do not have a job of your offering, but you are good at teaching yourself things, so what should you do in this kind of situation? Should you work for that job that is being offered to you, but you don't want to do it, or you should rather work on your skill?
That's a good question. And I think the answer is going to be very individual. It depends on a lot of factors, so I don't want to gloss over this. The first thing is, how badly do you need the money? Are other people dependent on you to be able to bring money home? For example, if you have parents that are elderly that can't work or for a number of different reasons need support, this is part of your responsibility. If you're married, if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend that you're trying to help, if you have a kid, brother or sister that you're trying to put through school, I think sometimes you have to make a little bit of sacrifice and say, you know what, the adult thing here to do is to take this job that I don't 100% love so I can support my family, friends, and the people that I care a lot about. That's just making sacrifice. If you're in a position where that is not a burden or responsibility that you have, I would say, and this is a privilege obviously, I would say try to find the thing that you love the most. Because if you love it more than the next person, you're going to put that much more passion and energy and enthusiasm into what it is that you do that will allow you to outperform everybody else that kind of is just showing up for a paycheck. That's your competitive advantage.
So, well, you can actually do things both side by side, but unless you don't have to, you should focus on your skill.
Yes, if you don't have to, if you're not required to, then I would suggest you do the things that you love. But even if you had a full-time job, what you're doing is, in most countries, I think you're making a commitment of giving them your best 40 hours. What you do after hours, what you do on the weekends, is up to you. So this is again about sacrifice. So you say, you know what, I've had to sacrifice for my family to support them, but on the weekends, I need their help to do the things that normally I would be responsible for so that I can continue my education, the pursuit of the things that I love. There's balance again.
Okay. So do our entrepreneurs think like if they have started something, do they immediately want to jump on to the next thing, or do they want to stay on that one thing that they started and make it grow?
I don't know if this is...
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
If they want to keep on growing, like keep multiple things going on at the same time, or do they want to focus on one thing?
Yeah, I don't think this is particularly exclusive of entrepreneurs. It's just a question of life and people. I think there's this thing called the law of concentration, or the law of focus, and that you have finite amount of energy and time to spend on something. And if you try to do 100 things, you're going to do 100 things poorly. And if you are able to use that exact same amount of time and energy and put it into a few things, there's a good chance you might actually become really good at it. There's a very famous and often quoted Bruce Lee thing where he said, I don't fear the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks one time, but I do fear the person who's practiced one kick 10,000 times. That's the law of focus.
That's true. So, well, you're saying that it's always better to focus on one thing, make it grow, and then move on to the next thing if you can.
Yeah, ideally, you need to spend your time to achieve a level of mastery and of expertise, and people look at you as an authority. And if you're able to be seen like that, I think then you start to explore other things. But this is the problem. This is the dip that I was referring to once again, where things get tough and it becomes boring and repetitive. You're on your 7th book, but you're supposed to read 35 books, and it's getting tiring for you. And so you quit. So you never get past a dip and you move on to something else. And I think the world is full of people who can't get through the dip. They don't have the enthusiasm, and it wanes and it dissipates. And so they're never able to get onto the other side and capture the reward of their hard work.
Okay. Well, it is easy to take inspiration from successful entrepreneurs, especially like you, but sometimes that inspiration isn't enough for you to take that very first step. How to get over those made-up fears in our heads? Well, I know you already answered this about if you have to provide for a family, then you obviously cannot do it. But sometimes those things aren't in the way, you're just scared. So how do you make yourself do these things?
Yeah, I think we live in a culture that is fascinated with inspiration. And I think inspiration, if it doesn't turn into action, is pretty worthless. It's like you feel pumped. You watch a video on Instagram and somebody's like really in amazing shape and they're working out. You feel like really good, like you're there, but you don't do anything. You don't step in the gym. You don't do the reps. You don't put in the work. It is kind of worthless at that point. And there's this term that's thrown around. It's like inspiration porn. It's like you just get inspired, but you don't really do anything and nothing comes out of it. So I want to talk a little bit about fear. And fear is a real thing. But as I've learned recently, fear can be a very superficial emotion because you have to look at like what the fear is. The fear is a response to something much deeper, and you have to dive deeper into the core of what's creating that fear. And I think I've been able to identify at least 2 monsters. The first monster is the fear of perfection, and the other monster is the procrastination monster, and they're kind of related. So let me talk about this because fear has many different faces. So the procrastination face is, I will do the hard work later, and you get distracted. So instead of reading the white paper or watching the videos by taking incredibly scrupulous notes, you switch gears. You jump on Twitter, you jump on Instagram, you jump on Facebook. You do something else that distracts you. You keep delaying the thing that you need to do. That's a good sign that you're afraid to do it. Now, a lot of people call this overthinking, or paralysis by analysis. You keep thinking, you just keep pushing it off, but you never actually do anything. The other fear, the face of fear, is perfectionism, and I think this hurts so many creative people. And I'm really I'm almost angry. I'm almost angry about this, that people think that there's this idea that perfection exists. To me, perfection is like this mirage in the desert that you're dying of thirst and you keep chasing after it, but you never find it because nothing is there. It will never quench your thirst. I think we have to adopt a different mentality, that if we just try new things, we'll be exposed to more, and it'll make us fear less. And the less you fear, the more you try, the more you'll be exposed to. So this is critical. So if we stop putting these expectations on ourselves, maybe from our parents, our peers, and our professors, that we can actually go and do something with our life and not worry too much about the opinion of other people. And this is really critical to your growth.
Well, for example, if you're learning a skill, should you immediately go into practice should you start selling your stuff? For example, if you're a graphic designer and you just started learning it and you know the basics of graphic designing, should you start selling things to increase your experience, or should you just work on yourself first? Because
okay, this is a very good question.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, you can talk. I'm sorry. Well, I think that practice makes your skill even more better. So if you go in the field first and you see what's selling better, you can do that, and you can do that to your designs, and then maybe make it there in time. So what do you think?
Yes, I want to remove one part of this, which is money has nothing to do with this at all. If you play basketball and you go out at night and you're dribbling and you're practicing, you're doing drills, you're doing everything that you need to do to become better, that's just called experience. So if you're a designer and you work on your craft, you've learned something, you keep applying it over and over again, what you get paid for has nothing to do with your experience, period. People need to understand that, okay? Just because somebody pays you for it doesn't change the experience that you're getting from doing it. It's nice to be paid for things. So if you're still learning and you're in the earlier stages of your professional design career, what I would suggest that you do is just keep making stuff for anybody, for yourself, for any. It doesn't really matter if there's any money involved. You need to experience things, and you need to keep asking yourself, what did I learn? What could I do better? How do I improve? And where else can I learn more from what it is that I'm interested in? And eventually, if you keep doing this, people are going to notice. They're going to say, wow, this person, this kid's work, this man, this woman's work is really good. We should reach out to this person and hire them. But when you get to a certain level of proficiency, that you know the tools, that you know kind of what you're doing, it's time to go and seek work. And each person's going to have to figure out like when they're ready for that. But just know this, because I want to be careful about how I say this, is that there will never be a perfect time. You will never be fully ready to do anything. You have to take a leap of faith at some point and test yourself. We've done that throughout the 20 plus years we've run our company. We commit to doing things that we're not quite sure yet how we're going to do them. And it's a wonderful, stressful, exciting journey. You climb up to the top of the mountain, and once you hit that peak, everything becomes really easy. But that journey up is very difficult, but we love that part of it.
Well, I agree with you, because learning is a process that never stops. So every step of the way, even if you're a professional, you're still learning, right? Well, you just said that you can take your practice, even if you're a beginner, you should start practicing it professionally. So is it okay to use your skill for free, or should you charge for it? If you're really good at something, like, is it okay to just let people take advantage of it, and you shouldn't get anything from it?
I think in your question is the answer. If a professional doesn't do anything for free, that's it. So if you feel like you're being taken advantage of, obviously don't do it. Don't do it. But there's you have to understand something, that two people, when they decide to work together, that there's an exchange of value. Sometimes the exchange from the client side is money. Sometimes it's something totally different, that they'll recommend you to 10 people. Honestly, that they'll do that. Or they'll include you in something, or they'll introduce you at an important function. Or perhaps you just really admire somebody and you want to work for them, and this is the best way for you to get feedback from them. So it's not always transactional in terms of money exchanging hands. They could also do something for you. They could write a recommendation letter. They can send you equipment or supplies that they manufacture that you actually need and want. So there's lots of ways to do this, but definitely if you feel like you're not getting a fair exchange in value, do not do it.
Okay. So, for example, if you hire people on a daily basis, I think. How do you deal with team members that keep ghosting your messages in group chats? Like, how do you inspire them to listen to you?
Team members, like they're part of my staff or freelance pool?
And your staff.
Oh, my staff, they wouldn't do that. My staff knows better than if I send them a message that they need to do something, that I should get a response pretty quickly.
And
they
what
know
about
better
the
than that.
Okay, and what about your employees?
That's my staff, right? My employee is my staff.
Okay.
Are you talking about freelancers?
Yes, about your freelancers.
Yeah, okay, so freelancers, it's because I don't have an established relationship with them, or I've only worked with them in limited capacity. I would just have very clear and open communication with them. I would say like, hey, there are a couple of things I expect from you. Everything else you do it the way that you want. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not a pixel pusher or a pixel effer. I don't do that. So what I say is, look, in the beginning of the day, send me what you have. At the end of the day, send me what you have, and I'll send you a couple of notes in between. And all I need you to do is when I send you something, just respond by saying, got it. Just so that the communication loop is closed, and we want to be able to close that. Because otherwise I sit around thinking, did Mary or did Bob read my message? Did they understand what it is that I'm saying? And that usually becomes problematic. You don't want your boss or your employer to sit around and think, do they understand me? Are they doing something? So you want to over communicate if possible, but you definitely don't want to under communicate.
And I'm in. Now, Chris, can you just tell us, there's a lot to the entrepreneurship world, dealing with the clients, getting the more clients on board, deciding who is going to define the value. And there's a lot in the potential market of Pakistan. And whenever the students are studying, especially the students that are following or seeing you, what do you recommend that? Should they just hop into get into some agency, or should they just start doing the freelance work and then get onto the entrepreneurial journey? And how do they look forward towards their future? Do they look into some agency, or do they look forward towards building a company? Because it's not that easy. We are 5 years into this company now. And I know the ups and downs, how we are seeing things. Obviously, you know 10 times more than me how things go around in a company. So I would really like to know about myself as well. How do you see the future of the services industry, the creativity? Because that's how I see it as the most valuable thing coming up. All of the other things are going to be robotic in near future. And they are already being robotic much more, other than the creativity.
Yes. Can you do me a favor and maybe just ask me one question?
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to take notes here, and it's like I feel like at least I heard 2 questions, but can we just start with one and go from there?
Yeah. So the first and the major question is, what steps should the students be taking when they're graduating towards making their career into the design world?
Yeah. Okay. So if you just got out of school or about to get out of school, I think it's kind of important for you to remember this, is that just because you finished school doesn't mean you finished learning. You need to go somewhere where you can learn. Ideally, that would be with a company that you really admire, that you look up to, from individuals that you've looked at from afar, and go to work there. If they have a good learning environment, that's going to be worth its weight in gold, because you're going to see how they run their business, how they manage teams, how they're able to come up with ideas. And the reason why I prefer that, especially if you're out of school, is because if you go and work for yourself, you're just basically regurgitating everything that you just learned, and you're not going to be growing at the same speed. So this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And I've seen this, and I've made this mistake myself. I'm speaking from experience here. When I got out of school, I worked at a couple different jobs. I was fairly impatient, and I had the opportunity to start my company, so I did. And I didn't know anything about sales, marketing, management, bidding, everything you could think of. I didn't even know my craft that well at that point. And so the first 2 years were actually quite difficult. I made a lot of mistakes. And luckily, I graduated out of school at a time in which there were many opportunities that were very lucrative. So I had many chances to fail, and there wasn't a whole lot of competition. Well, the world's changed a lot since 1995. It is a very different marketplace right now. It may be less forgiving of you making those kinds of mistakes. I was chatting with somebody on Twitter who worked an entire year to save up money to buy a secondhand laptop, and then the laptop died on him. It was devastating for him. So this is what I mean. Like when you go off on your own, you learn very slowly. Now, thankfully, there are other resources besides the Futur to help you teach or help to teach you things about design, about business, about mindset. And we're doing the best that we can, but it's not the same thing as working next to somebody in very close proximity and learning from them. So if you want to start your own agency, what I would recommend is you give yourself maybe 2 to 3 years of working for somebody that you really admire. That's a great learning environment, and take lots of notes and ask to be part of client meetings and to see the other side, the strategic side. What are they doing behind the scenes? To go on press checks, to see how they manage print jobs. This is really important. And these are skills that very few people are going to let you see unless you make a full-time commitment. And then when you're ready, start your own company. And the way that I would recommend that you do that is to create your own website, to manage and build your own personal brand so that there's demand for your work well in advance of you contemplating or thinking about quitting. And this is really, really critical, because then now you can fall back on opportunity. So you're not desperate to take whatever comes your way. When you're desperate, you cede all the leverage to the other side, to the buyer. So if they say, you know what, I'm not going to pay you 500, I'm going to pay you 50. You almost have no choice but to say yes. And then now you're going to start to resent that client. You're not going to put out your best work. And so that client's not going to recommend you to anybody, and you're not proud of the work either. So what did you just do? You self-sabotage right there. You walked away from a great job and a career to do something without a plan. So have a plan.
So that's a great answer. That's a very profound answer I was looking for. Basically, what you said was a person needs to be very well planned about the journey of life. So firstly, you need to plan that you want to be an entrepreneur. Then you need to plan the journey to become an entrepreneur so that you make less of a mistake. Learning through mistakes is better to learn from others' experiences, much better than learning from your own mistakes. And that's how they get into the company, and then they show commitment, a lot of commitment, not just a 9 to 5, not thinking it as a 9 to 5 job. They just think of it as 9 to 12, maybe in the night or whatever that it takes to learn everything that it demands, even if you are an employee or working for somebody, and then taking your own journey, because that's what it demands as well. There's no 9 to 5s or there's no 9 to 9s even. But to consider, and right now it's like almost 12 a.m. and I'm sitting inside the office. So that's how things are. So
well, I do want to clarify something. Can I say something? Because I think it's especially important for people who are living on the other side of the world. And I do want to say this, is that I think the idea of working 9 to 5 is totally okay. It's totally okay. Give people your best 8 hours, okay? If you want to continue working, it should be your choice, not be because they've mismanaged projects or underbid projects and they don't have enough resources. So they're now taking advantage of your goodwill. And I don't think that's healthy. I don't think it's sustainable. I think what you do after 5 o'clock should be up to you. And I'll give you an example from my own life. And when I was first working at an ad agency, I stayed after hours when everybody went home because I felt like I could finally think, because now it was distraction free. And I would wander through the different offices. I would read magazines. I would look at the books, and I was learning. Nobody asked me to. Nobody forced me to be there. The work schedule was very manageable, and I got more work done, and I enjoyed that time, and I was okay. I was okay with sleeping on the floor under my desk, doing whatever it is that I wanted to do, because I was 20 years old and it was fine. But as I got older, I started to realize this is unsustainable. I'm breaking down my body. I'm living 3 times the lifetime in the time that I have, and I'm going to age much faster, and eventually I'm going to burn out. I don't want to do this anymore. I need to learn to work smarter, not harder, and to use more thinking and research versus just trying to stare at that screen until something happens, right? And we know this. So what I would say is use some part of your workday on personal development. Jim Rohn said something like this, and he's like, the wealth comes from people who work harder on themselves than on their jobs. This is really important. You have to work on yourself. You have to do personal development. So maybe after between 5 and 12, you're watching videos, you're volunteering to do something that gives you new skills, not just to work harder.
Yeah, that's very good advice. It's really profound. I have been seeing you telling these kinds of advice in videos, but sometimes it becomes very harder. But I do agree that personal development is way more important than any other kind of business development we need to get done in our life. There's another question that I would like to ask. This is for myself. I have seen the video of how to, this is a big question, how to approach good clients. And although you have been through that way before, I don't know what the right now your business development team and how it's handling it, this kind of thing. But what I need to know is we do work on Facebook leads, and we do manage to get clients. And I talk to the clients way in the very start about the pricing, as you said, not to waste time with the clients. I use those tricks as well. But still, somehow I assume that in Pakistan market, or the market we deal in, usually the people who have more money, or the organizations who have built up, who can afford good branding, does not value branding much more. And the smaller startups who actually are understanding the value of branding are not able to pay much. I have also heard your videos about the charity and the clients that you need to divide between the charity work you're doing and the client's work that you're doing. But still, I would like to know, did you face some kind of similar things when you started off your business? How did you manage to get more clients? Because I have jumped 20 times off my prices. But right now, I feel like stuck from the past 1 year, and we're not finding the way. And eventually, we had to close the deal when it comes to a bit in the danger zone. Because to meet expenses, and then we get stuck with the bad clients, and all of this stuff is still happening. So how do you suggest us to move forward with this?
Okay. Again, I think you asked 14 questions in there, but I think the one that I heard, the last one, was how did we do this at the beginning of our career? Is that right? Or do you want me to give you advice on how you should handle it today?
Maybe both of them. We have time.
So you want me to start with us first or with you first?
I want you to start with me first, and just in that, if this relates to your career, you need to you can help me with the story.
Okay, so let me talk about you and what's going on with you. I don't need to know the particulars, but because I've talked to enough business owners and people who run businesses that I kind of see certain patterns, right? So what happens in the very beginning is you know nothing. You're grossly undercharging. You're practically giving the work away for free because you desire experience. You want to have something on your portfolio to say this is a real project. Like I said before, whether you get paid for something or not really doesn't matter. What matters is it good? Is it smart? Is it strategic? Does it look like it solved a real problem? That's what matters, okay? And eventually you come upon different mentors or coaches, or you read a book or watch a video, something, you start to develop these skills and you realize, man, I'm grossly undercharging. I need to start to charge more. And you learn the techniques, and then you're successful. So that builds confidence, and you keep doing this. And so you double, triple, quadruple until now you're at 30 times what you used to charge. This is fantastic. And then something happens. You hit a plateau. Like, why can't I get to the next level? I know there are many levels beyond what I'm charging. And that's because you have to become a totally different person each time you move up one massive leap. Just imagine this analogy, okay? The first hill that you climb is made of like solid rock. It's easy to climb. The second hill that you climb on your way to the top is made up of loose gravel. And so the same ideas of grabbing onto something, finding your footing, is totally different because the gravel keeps moving away. You take 2 steps forward, you go 3 steps back. So you have to develop a totally different strategy. Now, instead of going vertically, you might go side to side and move at a different pace. This I learned in my own life. When you move up the next level of the mountain or the hill, it requires a totally different skill set. So the expression of what got you here won't get you there. Applying the lessons from the past will not move you to the next level. So you need to change. You need to learn to speak different, to talk different, to offer different skills to be able to move in that category. Now, let me relate it to my own personal life so you can understand more in a more tangible way, because it might sound abstract to your audience, right? For the first 5 or 6 years of running our business, maybe less than that, we were able to get very lucrative jobs, but the jobs seemed to hit a certain ceiling that when it got beyond $200,000 per job, it became actually very difficult for us to close. Anything below 200,000, we're closing at 60, 70% of the time. And this is a very competitive environment, and we got those jobs. It made us a little bit arrogant, and we felt entitled, like just because you call us, we're going to win. And we didn't realize that once you get to $200,000 to $400,000 to $500,000, they can hire anybody in the world. So we were no longer competing with firms in Los Angeles. And my business coach at that time, he said, look, next tier up, you're not competing with the world. They can hire whoever they want in any time zone. So you have to level up. So he taught me at that moment in time how to play the next level game. He told me, I think you made the mistake that you're in the professional league, but you're just in the junior league. Okay? And then if you get there and then you get to the $500,000 to $1 million mark, now you're in the all-star league. So this is the best of the best of the best that you're competing with now. And they're looking for something very different. So each time you move up, you have to learn different skill sets. You have to learn to be able to talk strategically. You have to be able to ease the client's fears that they're going to spend $400,000 with some kid in Los Angeles with a team of 12 people. That's a scary proposition. If they make the wrong decision, there's a good chance they're going to lose face at the agency. They're going to lose their job or demoted, and it's going to haunt them for the next couple of jobs that they move to. And this is critical. This is why at a certain tier, I've said this before, people don't hire the best option, they hire the least risky option. So your job at this point is to appear to be less risky than the next people. And there's a lot of strategies on how to do that.
Okay, that's a very profound thing to learn. I guess I need to work a lot on myself now. Okay, Chris.
Can I share one more thing with you?
Yeah, sure.
You know, when I was in school, at art school, very first semester, my professor, Roland Young, he said, look around you. And these are the people that you think you compete with, right? So if you are able to be at the top of your class, you might think you have it made. But then to realize you're not just competing with these students, you're competing with every student that's ever graduated from here and every other school. Let that sink in for a second. And he says, and then when you get to a certain level, you'll be competing against me. And that scared me. This is my professor. This is the person I looked up to. This is the person I thought was a genius. And you're saying now I have to be better than you? And it took me a little while to figure out what he meant. Really, so what's happening with you is as you move up the level, and I want to say this to you in the same way he said it to me, when you are able to command a certain dollar amount for what it is that you do, you will eventually compete with me. This is what you need to understand, that you have to level up. You have to transform. You have to become a different person.
That's very right. Thank you for the such advices I was already looking for. I was very happy when this session was basically offered to me as the COVID situation hits in. My team said that you should be giving a session on entrepreneurship. But I refused to, and I am glad I refused. And when they told me that they have got you on board, I was so excited. Like, how could you get him on board? I was unable to get him tabbed just for a chat. So I was very happy. And to get you on board and to take advices directly from you, it's an honor. Okay, Chris, what motivated you to become a teacher? The Futur is a very profound channel, but I know I started off my own channel. We started off with my company name is basically Go for IT, the agency name is a German name. We started the series with the name of Out of Purpose Hearing, inspiring by you, but it wasn't the native bilingual thing. Some of the idea was you, or I can say that it is 80% of your idea. So we started that off, but I eventually exhausted on, you can say that 8 to 10 videos we just made. I mean, for tons on YouTube and on Facebook. I know it requires a lot of stuff. It requires a lot of effort, a lot of back work to be done, and then the role of clients and the play role, we try to do that as well. So what keeps you motivated for that? There's a lot of effort that you have put into the future, seeing your own agency that might have suffered because of this. And again, the future is not some kind of channel that is going to help you out with your clientele, because most of the audience is going to be just designers. Who are actually going to be your competitors one day, as you already said that. So what was the actual motivation behind that? How did you keep yourself motivated by till date about it?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm just making some notes here. Okay, I want to make sure that your audience hears this part of this message, because prior to me making my first YouTube video, I was already teaching for 15 years at Art Center at Otis and lecturing at different Cal State schools and even Cal Arts. 15 years I've been teaching. And so I don't just pop on the scene like I know how to teach. I've been putting the time into the craft, invisible to everybody else except for a handful of students. The story goes like this. On occasion, my wife would come to class with me, and she's also a designer. I went to school with her. She's a fabulous and incredibly talented person, but she had since retired. Prior to having our kids, she retired from the business. And she would go to class with me, and she finally got to see me in my element, and I was really excited. I came alive in ways that you don't normally see me, because I'm sharing my gift. I'm trying to help other people get unstuck, and I describe to my students oftentimes it's full contact teaching. We have lots of fun. We make fun of each other, and it's like goofy, weird things so that we create a relaxed learning environment, and that's where the creativity bubbles up. And then we get in the car, and I'm eager to hear her feedback. And we're driving home from Pasadena to Santa Monica, which is a pretty long drive. And I asked her, so what do you think? And she said, it was great. Now I know why you love teaching so much. It's like you're bringing all parts. You're like part teacher, part designer, part business person, motivational speaker, and comedian all at the same time. And I smiled very contently. And then she said to me, but, do you feel like you get tired of teaching the same ideas over and over and repeating yourself? Do you feel like you could be doing more for more people if it weren't contained to this classroom? That did not sit well with me. The reason why I was a little upset was because there was a lot of truth in what she said, and I've been thinking about it. So when you hear something that makes you feel really uncomfortable, you have to ask yourself, why am I feeling uncomfortable? Instead of just reacting and pushing it away. Because there was truth in that, and I was thinking about that. It turned out months later, my friend had asked me, let's go make videos on YouTube. I didn't connect those two circles immediately. It wasn't totally obvious, right? Because I thought YouTube is a place for amateurs. It's a place for people to watch cat videos and prank videos and just whatever else the internet consumes. It's not a place where a professional person like me, who at that time had been already working for over 10 years, to put myself out there. There was a lot to risk. My professional reputation, losing my focus on managing the company and running projects. What was I doing? But I did it. Again, that feeling of discomfort, of putting myself in front of a camera and speaking my truth, telling my stories, and exposing things in terms of client relationships and things that I've done. And you're right. I don't really speak to clients. I speak to other creatives. But something weird and wonderful happened. Along the way, about a year and a half into it, we started to find an audience. I started to find my voice. And this is what led to the creation of Futur. And there's this line from, I think the book is called Rework, written by Jason Fried and David Heinemann Hansen. And it says for you to out-teach the competition. Show people your secret sauce. I'm not threatened by them. And if you think about this, the parallel that they draw in the book is that Chefs do this all the time. If you sit down and say, like, what are the top 5 chefs that you know? They're almost always people who've written books, who've appeared on TV shows, have their own TV show, and are prolific teachers. You could go all the way back to Julia Child or to somebody like Gordon Ramsay today and say, what's going on? There's no secret to their recipe. There's no secret to their technique. Yet they're worth millions, in some cases have $1 billion empire. Why is it that creatives then fear that by sharing what they know with other people, that it diminishes their value, that they're going to create clones that do exactly what they do? If that is truly your fear, that you are just 1 degree away from somebody replacing you because they've learned a technique of yours, then you don't believe in yourself enough, that you actually have more to give than just a technique. That if you teach the world what it is that you do, you become the sought after person that becomes synonymous with that thing. So if you think of like woodcut illustrations and you think of a person like Attack Peter, that is good for Peter. So he wants to teach. If you do really amazing watercolor illustrations of animals and you teach people how to do that, you become the person people most closely associate with watercolor paintings of animals. Creatives, they have this mentality, and it's a scarcity mentality, which is that if I give something, I'm going to lose something, that they play the zero-sum game, that for somebody to win, I must lose. And that's not the way the world works. And I hope that in some ways people perceive me as evidence of a person who's given everything that I have very generously, very openly, and it's not hurt me at all. It's actually built me up to have a pretty sizable following and to be able to exert the kind of influence that I have today. And I'm talking to you right now as evidence of that. Prior to me making a video, my first video on YouTube, which was in 2014, you did not know me from Jack. It wasn't until I stepped away from running the company and making commercials and music videos that then I was actually to make an impact on the world, to give something of myself. And in return, something wonderful happens. Manur is asking how to get potential clients. Here in Pakistan, people are making logos for $5 or $10. I see that. Okay, hold on, my light just went out. I'm gonna turn it back on. Okay, so here's the thing. I know that in certain developing markets, the cost of living is really low, and people who hire people in these areas, especially locals, know that, and so they offer you very little money. The question I have to ask you is, it's very difficult to change cultures. It's much easier for you to go where the client is. It really is. The number one secret to catching a big fish is to know where the big fish are and go there. So in other places in the world, America, parts of Europe, Canada, wherever else, you can get paid a lot more for doing exactly the same thing. But the reason why you're not doing that is because it's difficult to get there. And we talked about this at the beginning, as it should be difficult. It's hard to establish a website that feels like it's an international design firm. It's hard to do outreach to people in a totally different time zone than you, to speak the language that they speak, and to be able to be fluent in your conversation with them about what their business needs are. So once you learn how to do that, you'll be able to attract much better clients that will pay you 100 times more than what you're getting paid now.
So I'm back. So you were answering the questions, right?
I did answer the question because you disappeared. We're having problems with connectivity, I think.
Yeah, that's just it.
But you know what? I started to realize that we're an hour in. I could probably only take 1 or 2 more questions. I have to leave pretty soon.
Okay, sure. Let me. Why did you start teaching at Art Center? It's almost already done.
Yeah, why did I teach at Art Center?
Yeah,
because I love teaching.
Okay, how to get your first client?
How do you get your first client? Rather than waste very precious time, I'm going to suggest that you guys go and search how to get clients and put my name in there, and you're going to see this article that I've written. It tells you 10 things you need to do. So I don't want anybody to ask me that question unless you've read that article. What's next?
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, at the end, I would like to thank IDEA Society, COMSATS University that we are from. IDEA Society has done a great job getting people on board. It has always been inspiring. If I'm an entrepreneur today, it is greatly because of the COMSATS and especially the IDEA Society. that we have been taught a lot in these extracurricular activities, sitting with the people, especially like the students right now are having you on board. So that's an inspiration as well. So we just not get to see only the teachers in the classroom. We also get to see the mentors outside of the classroom because of this society. I really appreciate your presence and your precious time that you give us. Thank you so much. We'll surely be touching you up again soon for another good topic. I hope you won't mind that.
Sure.
And I hope you like it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Welcome.